Ordinarily, as kind of a general rule, I'm usually against movies that are being remade just for the sake of being remade. Like if I heard news that they're going to be making a Roger Rabbit 2, then I'd probably just be thinking like, this is just a cash grab. And most likely that would be the case. But Robert Zemeckis, the director behind the original movie, said that there's actually a good script out there, but the reason that it hasn't been made yet is because Disney just doesn't want to make Jessica Rabbit the way they would make Jessica Rabbit. This being reported on from the Hollywood Reporter. Robert Zemeckis says there's a good Roger Rabbit 2 script that will never get made because of Jessica Rabbit. They can't make a movie with Jessica in it, the Who Framed Roger Rabbit director said. Robert Zemeckis, who has bad news for fans who would love to see a sequel to Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Now, like I said, like if I heard that they were making a sequel to it, I'd just be thinking it's a mindless cash grab. So I'm not really interested in them making a sequel for this movie, especially since Bob Hoskins is not around anymore. So it would, I don't know, feel kind of wrong. The original movie was great by itself. You don't need to revisit it or anything like that. But the reason why they're not making a new Roger Rabbit movie just because they don't like the aesthetic of Jessica Rabbit, I think is actually a pretty poor excuse. The director appeared on the Happy, Sad, Confused podcast with Josh Horowitz this week to discuss his newest film Here, starring Tom Hanks and Robin Wright. During the conversation, the host asked the filmmaker about the potential Roger Rabbit sequel. There's a good script sitting at Disney, but here's the thing. Here's what you have to know, and you know this. The current Disney would never make Roger Rabbit. Today, Zemeckis said, they can't make a movie with Jessica in it. The article goes on to say you would think Disney wouldn't actually pass up a good script if they had one available, especially since a lot of the movies they've been releasing lately haven't really been landing. They've had some success this last year, but the year before there was just nothing but failures. And Disney isn't shy about remaking movies or doing sequels if they think that they can actually turn a quick buck off of it. But when it comes to Roger Rabbit, yeah, Robert Zemeckis believes they would never want to portray Jessica Rabbit in the manner in which she's supposed to be portrayed. This picture right here is from the theme park ride at Disneyland in Anaheim, where you can see that they have her wearing a trench coat because, you know, they need to cover her up in the current environment. And one of the things Robert Zemeckis is saying is that they would never actually allow her to be portrayed on screen in the manner in which her character is supposed to be portrayed, which is usually supposed to be more scantily clad, kind of like the femme fatale sort of manner. Look at what they did to Jessica at the theme park, he said. They trussed her up in a trench coat, you know. In 2021, Disneyland updated Jessica Rabbit's look in the Anaheim park from her red dress to a trench coat, allegedly more in line with her new career as a private investigator, taken after Bob Hoskins' Eddie Valiant in the project. And that's kind of a stupid change that they're doing to try to make her a private investigator as opposed to what her character was. Because one of the things that really worked about her character in the original movie is because the whole movie was sort of a noir type story. And usually a character like her is supposed to be kind of like the evil femme fatale, that she's beautiful on the outside, but inside she's an evil character. And it turns out she's a villain. Well, they put a twist on it because no, she actually was a good character. And when it was all said and done, the Back to the Future Helmer explained that when he first began working on the movie, a new regime had just entered Disney and they were full of energy and excited for whatever came next. Then I kept saying, and I sincerely say this, and I do believe this, and I'm saying, I'm making Roger Rabbit the way I believe Walt Disney would have made it, Zemeckis recalled on the podcast. And the reason I say that is because Walt Disney never made any of his movies for children. He always made them for adults, and that's what I decided to do with Roger Rabbit. That's not to say that kids can't enjoy the movie as well, though, because Robert Zemeckis said at the time he was making Who Framed Roger Rabbit, they had test screening for parents and they brought in some kids at age 5 and 6 years old, it says in the article. And he said he was pretty nervous about how kids and parents would also react to it, but everyone seemed to like the movie because it was just a good movie. I haven't seen it for a while. Last time I watched it was probably a couple of years ago. And I remember thinking like, yeah, it's kind of funny that they got away with this back in those days. I think I even remember saying to my wife when we were watching it that, yeah, you really won't see them make something like this anymore. And that's definitely the truth because a lot of the content in it, I wouldn't necessarily say it's inappropriate for children it's a little bit edgy. I will give them that, especially the aesthetic of Jessica Rabbit, but there was definitely a purpose for why they made her that way because the whole movie was harkening back to the old neo-noir films of the 50s and 40s and things like that. And that was part of her character. But at the same time, though, when it came to the character of Jessica Rabbit, is she was supposed to be one of those femme fatale type characters, the beautiful woman who turns out to be a backstabber or other things like that. And it actually worked against the trope for that movie because it turned out, no, she actually is just a loyal wife who is trying to do what's best for her husband, which was definitely a bit of a twist, but it worked out for that movie. And that's why I say, like, I don't think there's really anything in that movie that's inherently not suited for children. But when it comes to Disney trying to produce a movie like that nowadays, like I said, I can understand why Disney is trying to steer away from it because they don't want to have anything like this anymore. They're not trying to make stuff like this. They're just trying to make the content that they produce right now, which unfortunately is usually not the greatest stuff. Because when it comes to kids movies for Disney, or at least those stuff they're trying to produce right now, very rarely do you see something that I would say is a good movie. Now there's movies that they make that I enjoy, even more recent ones they've made that I have enjoyed. But actually maybe not last few years, but I am open to surprises in that regard. But for the most part, unfortunately, when they kind of have that mindset where if it's a kid's movie, then they don't necessarily have to try as much because they're like, yeah, kids are more forgiving, so we can just give them anything and they'll enjoy that. And I think there is some truth to that, unfortunately. But the movies that are truly great movies are the ones that I would say kids and adults both enjoy. Because even though kids can be momentarily distracted, it's something that's not really going to sit with them and they're going to ultimately forget about it. But the movies that are really good, even if kids don't necessarily know why it's so good, they can intuitively feel that there's something special about this particular movie. Like the movies that I watched as a kid myself, the ones that really resonated with me are the ones that had themes that I can go back and watch now as an adult that I think are more deep, have a deeper meaning than what you would initially pick up on as a kid. And that's what's really great about it. And I think that's something about Who Framed Roger Rabbit that was so good is that, well, like Robert Zemeckis said, he was trying to make a movie for adults, but he made it in a manner in which kids can also enjoy the movie. And I think that's why it was so good. But unfortunately, that's just not the type of movie that Disney's interested in making right now. Now, like I said at the start of this video, I'm really not super interested in them making a Roger Rabbit sequel, but not for the reason that Disney thinks Jessica Rabbit is too problematic and not PC enough for them, so that's why they shouldn't make it. I think Disney shouldn't make a movie for Roger Rabbit or a sequel to Roger Rabbit just for the simple purposes. It would ultimately just be a cash grab, and I don't think it would turn out that well. Even if Robert Zemeckis was involved with it and actually wanted to do a good movie, I don't know if he'd necessarily be given the wiggle room that's required in order for them to do it. I think Disney would try to push it too much in a certain direction, either make it a little bit more PC for modern audiences, or I don't know, maybe tone down certain aspects of it, or just try to dumb it down for kids because, you know, they always try to dumb things down for kids. If they don't understand or if it's a little bit too much for them, then they think like, okay, well, they're not going to understand this, so we need to make it too simplified for them. And I don't think that's really a recipe for a good movie. But if they gave Robert Zemeckis the rope that he actually needed to make it the movie that he thinks it should be made, then I think there could be some quality to it. And for that, I would actually praise it. But like I said, though, it just from the surface level, if I was just to rate like whether you want a Roger Rabbit sequel or not, even if Robert Zemeckis was making it, I would just say no, just from that alone. But let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. And also, if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest entertainment news. And don't forget to click that like button and share this video out there because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.